Welcome to another episode of the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, the podcast where we sit and sip, talk all things Civil War history and bourbon and whiskey. I'm Jack, joined as always by my co-host Elijah, and today we are coming to you from the historic Bell House in beautiful downtown Winchester, Virginia. The Bell House is preserved and maintained by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation, the managing entity of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District, and the official sponsor of the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast. If you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast, consider becoming a member of the Battlefields Foundation. Every dollar you give to support battlefield preservation here in the Shenandoah Valley, in turn, helps supports the Battlefield and Bourbon podcast. Also, sponsoring this episode is History Fix. If you want to bring to life fascinating historical events, civilizations, and figures right into your living room, check out History Fix. You can join them for movies, documentaries, short films, and how-tos. Historic eras currently range from the 1st to 21st century. A team of curators has hand-selected, comprehensive, and authentic historical content and made it available for all of us. Battlefields and Bourbon podcast listeners and fans receive an extra 20% off of your first year's annual subscription if you sign up today at www.historyfix.com and use promo code BATTLEFIELD. That's BATTLEFIELD. Every subscription includes a 7-day risk-free trial. After signing up, you can download History Fix on your smartphone or smart TV and most places where you stream. Escape into history today with History Fix. Elijah, it's not just us joined here in the room, but we also virtually have our good friend Will from Civil War Digital Digest, who's also kind of co-doing this episode with us. So Will, take it away.
Thanks, Jack and Elijah. I wish I was there at Bell House with you. It's one of my favorite places to go relax, but unfortunately, work has me here in Chicago. Gang, if you're seeing this on the Digest page, you'd normally hear Welcome to Civil War Digital Digest. I'm Will, and tonight we're going to talk about Christmas and we're going to talk about whiskey. You don't often hear alcohol on the Digest channel, but we're making an exception to celebrate the hobby and to share the day with our friends from Battlefields and Bourbon. You've heard us give a shout out to them. Today we'll also give a shout out to our patrons, the CWDD Coffee Grinders. Their financial support both makes the software to be able to do this remote recording possible. They make it so we can travel, and the first 15% of any money that somebody gives to the Digest is saved for preservation before later funds help us do the Digest and run. Shenandoah Valley Battlefields is one of the recipients of many of our quarterly preservation donations. Many ideas are brought together. The patrons vote on it. We've helped with Rice House. We've helped with Battery Hill. It's really fun to see how things are changing in the valley. So for now, we'll give it back to you guys and let's keep chatting.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Will. We're excited, and thank you all for listening. And as this episode drops on both the Civil War Digital Digest YouTube channel as well as the Battlefields and Bourbon channel, we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. But our glasses are empty, Elijah and Will, so let's fill them up. Elijah, what are we sipping on today?
So we've got a doubleheader this evening. We are going to be sipping on something a little different than Will. We've got, both from the same distillery though, Jeptha Creed's newest release of their red, white, and blue bourbon. It is their batch 3. It is 100 proof, and this is going to be, as the name suggests, a mash bill of red, white, and blue corn, along with malted rye and malted barley. So you got 25% of each red, white, and blue corn, as well as 20% malted rye, 5% malted barley. No age statement here, but that's okay. We'll find out how we take that here in just a moment. But Will's also got a Jeptha Creed product as well. It's their 4-grain Bloody Butcher corn bourbon whiskey there, and that is a 98 proof expression of 70% Bloody Butcher or heirloom corn, 15% malted rye, and 10% malted wheat, 5% malted barley. 4 grains in his, 5 grains in ours, all kinds of flavor to unpack here. So we can crack this one open and give it a tasting.
Will had a really good pop on his end.
Yeah, his was a little better than ours this time, but that's okay.
All right. So if you're not familiar with the way we do our show here, if you're a Digest listener, we fill up our glasses, we'll give it a smell, tell everybody what we get off the nosing there, and then we'll take a sip and go from there.
What do you guys have over there as far as the nose goes?
Almost like an orange creamsicle, orange vanilla. Very sweet, but that's to be expected with a lot of corn like that.
There's a lot of smoothness here and a lot of malt in this one.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign. Love that.
Definitely get the orange peel. Let's have a sip.
Mm-hmm. Very light on the palate. Not so much as what you would kind of get off of the nosing. The nose kind of smacks you in the face as far as the aroma of this whiskey, but the palate is very light, very approachable, textbook smooth, if you're one that uses that term with your whiskeys. But Jeptha Creed, the folks at Jeptha Creed were so kind as to send us this expression, so we appreciate them for that. That helps us, create episodes for our listeners. So shout out to them for that, and shout out to them for an excellent product.
I was happy to purchase this at a local package store here in the Chicagoland area. It is very smooth as well. I can tell, we had Stag together earlier this year, which just would hit you in the face at 130 proof and burn for half an hour afterwards. This doesn't have that. This I think would be a really good beginner bourbon. Not in a negative way, but if you're trying to introduce somebody, use this. And let's face it, when we talk history, Bloody Butcher heirloom corn and Shelbyville, Kentucky. Let me just say two things about Shelbyville where this is made. I've been there this year. I was blessed to be asked by WNET and the gang at Wide Awake Films to direct the opening episode of Secrets of the Dead on PBS this year, which is called The Lost Massacre. It was about soldiers from the 5th United States Colored Cavalry who marched out of Camp Nelson National Monument, and they were jumped by Confederate bushwhackers, and 22 of them were killed, and their bodies are missing. And The Lost Massacre was trying to find where these men were. That showed this year on PBS in October and November, so you can see it and you can experience the history there as well as go there. That massacre took place just outside of Shelbyville. We did several of our key interviews at a beautiful antique shop in Shelbyville. And matter of fact, if you subscribe to History Fix, one of the new Christmas episodes, which is making Charles Dickens's Punch from Victorian Barroom, shot at the same location in Shelbyville. So we'll just keep the history going here.
Yeah. Interesting fact there.
An unexpected tie-in. Yeah, no, we did not know that prior to recording this.
We were almost recording when we figured it out. I saw Shelbyville, and I was like, wait a second. Beautiful small town, wonderful place to visit. As we talk about places like the Valley, places like Shelbyville, it's December as you're seeing this. It's Christmas. You get to January, you start thinking about your summer vacations. I can't speak more highly than my time in Shelbyville. I can't speak more highly than spending an evening walking on the Walking Mall where the Civil War Museum is there in Winchester. Wonderful places to spend time. Think about getting back there as the weather warms.
For sure. Yeah. I think we take it for granted a little bit, and you haven't came out to Winchester yet or the Valley. This time of year, it's a beautiful place. So battlefields are welcoming all year round, and historic sites as well. So, but Will, like you said, it's Christmas, and as this episode's dropped, it is Christmas. So if you're a trooper enough to be listening to it on Christmas Day, thank you. But we want to talk about Christmas time and Christmas and its celebration during the American Civil War. So I know, Will, you've got many examples you kind of want to bring up in some different stories. So we'll let you kind of take it away.
Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and talk about Christmas in the mid-19th century and Christmas in the Civil War. Since I was a little kid, I've been a huge fan of Christmas, and now being a Civil War buff, it's really fun to put them together, and I have for many years have gotten to be able to work on this interpretation, whether it's speaking or whether it's interpreting and living history at different sites across Michigan and across the country. Let's talk about what Christmas was like. One thing is where we are in a nation today. We like to recognize our differences, and we talk about people from different communities. And when I was young, we were still making a big thing about America being the melting pot. And that really is something I want to bring up, because that is something that Christmas is doing in the mid-19th century. Christmas as a Christian tradition is not the same across all branches of the Christian church. And so it actually is some of the secular understandings that start to intermingle, and the different sects and denominations of the Christian church that allow you to go ahead and see things changing. And also as different peoples come together, and we'll find examples from Italy, from Great Britain, from Germany as we talk tonight, and all those combine to become what is more understood as the American Christmas now, and it really coalesces around the Civil War. let's start with the centerpiece in the 19th century, and that comes out of the Germanic tradition. That is the Christmas tree. We start to see Christmas trees showing up in America in the early 19th century and growing in popularity, where you see gatherings and communities from the German traditions and German settlers, you will start to see Christmas trees. Well, we talk about how things were different during the Civil War, and we talk about how things are still very much similar like they are today. We're royal watchers, many of us. Many people were royal watchers back then. Queen Victoria marries Prince Albert. He's of Germanic background. Prince Albert brings a Christmas tree into Buckingham Palace, and Christmas trees in the mid-19th century will continue to grow, but predominantly we find that they are smaller trees, a couple of feet tall, placed in the center of the room and put on a table. And so it's a little different than today in the corner. We will, by the Civil War, see full-height trees in a room, but the center tree is very popular. And we see that in a newspaper woodcut from the Victorian family, from Queen Victoria's family. And within a couple of years, we see almost a very similar woodcut in a newspaper, but it's been Americanized, and Christmas trees become a lot more popular. Well, if you have Christmas trees, you need to decorate them. Godey's in 1860 talks about what it was, and the quote here says, Marion drew long strings of bright holly berries threaded like beads upon fine cord. They were festooned in graceful garlands from the boughs of the tree, and while Marion was thus employed, Grace and Father arranged the tiny tapers. This was a delicate task. Long pieces of fine wire will pass through the taper at the bottom and collapse over each branch, twisted underneath. Great care was taken that there should be a clear space above each wick that nothing might catch fire. Okay, let's go ahead and stop there. Our Christmas trees have lights on them. Christmas trees during the Civil War could have lights on them. However, those were candles. I've been
a little bit of a fire hazard
3 times in my life. I grew up in a United Methodist family, and my mom was the choir director. And my dad sang bass, and his buddy DeVere sang bass. DeVere's wife Zita was from Germany, and they brought a lot of the traditions home, and their family did a candlelit Christmas tree every few years.
Wow.
And I actually got to see it when I was a kid. And because of that, twice we've gone ahead and replicated it for Civil War Digital Digest episodes, and you're seeing some footage of it here. Let me just be incredibly painfully clear. I'm not recommending you do this. You hear the statement from 1860. We are very careful that there is nothing above this. You are lighting fire on a pine tree. Elijah, I know you're headed towards the fire service. I can see you turning fire truck red going, wait a second. This is a bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
The 2 times we've done it for photography, we have actually had my friend Robert Huck, a firefighter, with us with firefighter gear to make sure it was done safely. But when you see it, when you follow the rules, that is, you cut the tree that day so it is as live as possible. You listen to what the Godey's quote lady from Godey said, and that is you arrange the tapers carefully. Nothing is above. You have one of the most amazing looking things I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Now, another thing to be careful of is she talks about festooning with holly berries. We now know that holly berries are poisonous. Let's not go poking a bunch of holes. If you're looking for a vintage Christmas tree or a Civil War Christmas tree look, you can get battery-powered candles that look really stinking good these days, and you can put them on. You can go ahead and thread cranberries. Popcorn was used. Ornaments were often handmade. They could be little pieces of tinsel. They could be little shapes cut out of paper and hung with ribbons. They could be ribbons run through. Sometimes a present was made as part of it because nuts could be seen as a present, and a little bit of cloth wrapped up to hold the nuts, tied with a little bit of lace, and that's hung on the tree. You get dual purpose. You get the Christmas present and you get the decoration for the tree. And let's hit actually the Civil War for the first time. If you're Alfred Bellard from the 5th New Jersey, you'll write, in order to make it look much like Christmas as possible, a small tree was stuck up in front of our tent, decked off with hardtack and pork.
Huh. Did you recreate that one yet on the digest?
Have not done that one, but when we've done trees for interpretation at historic Fort Wayne, Detroit, and at Greenfield Village, we have used such things as uniform buttons and pieces like that. My friend Jeremy, who helped launch Civil War Digital Digest, put a spare officer's shoulder strap up at one point in place of a star up on the top. So being in an officer's headquarters at one point, we talk about red tape and the rebellion, how the red tape that we talk about was, now we say you got to go through red tape. Red tape back then was literally what you sent government documents back in, tied up with pieces of red tape. We took some of that red tape out of the officer's desk and went ahead and festooned the tree with it.
Perfect.
So, decorations are homemade. You can buy decorations. You can find them in Harper's. You can find them in the different magazines. That's going to cost money. You can get good German glass ornaments. Those are going to be shipped in, imported. This is not working class, lower middle class farming folks. This is going to be for your upper social stratus.
Well, it helps with officers using buttons as ornaments because they've got 2 rows of them, so plenty to spare.
Yeah, well, the senior officers, absolutely. We didn't pull buttons off the jackets. We took extra ones like could have been purchased from a sutler to replace pieces.
Right.
So, working from the tree out, there is talk of Christmas stockings, and we'll come to where that comes from in a little bit when we talk about literature. Stockings are hung, presents go in there. Natural decorations are definitely very popular. We find evergreens, boughs, and that would be decorated, whether put by the windows, whether put on the mantle on top of the fireplace. Again, let's be thinking we're putting pine over top of a fireplace. We need to be really cautious about this. At a time when the world goes dormant, to pull an evergreen in and bring something of life into the house as a part of a festivity, I often talk about candles being part of a festivity when we would do interpretation, because light and greenery, these are things that when it gets dark early in the afternoon or late in the afternoon rather than in the evening, because the days are short, when the plants have gone to sleep for the year, being able to have extra candles, being able to have greenery, and being able to have the red of either the holly or in our case the cranberries just brings some of that celebration back in. Presents, absolutely a thing. We would see packages sent to the field from soldiers. Presents probably were simpler. It's not the gigantic pile under the tree like we see today. It may be 1, it may be 2. There's a quote that I don't have here that we used in one of the digest episodes where the lady said, when I was a child, my dad gave me a perfectly ugly sugar dog, which I've not been able to identify yet what a sugar dog is, but it sounds like a candy. And she said, I was perfectly happy because I received a present.
Even if it wasn't a great one.
It's the gift, it's the thought. And so there's some of that going on. And of course, who gives the presents? Or who brings the presents, gents?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, all right. Okay, Jack's going to play the game.
Yes.
Santa Claus is definitely somebody who is coming into our understanding. He's been fun to tell the story of for years because we did an episode in the digest that we enlarged and improved for History Fix. The digest episode is called More, Nast, and Santa. It's a collision of 3 men, 2 real and 1 fictitious. In 1822, the poem An Account of the Visit from St. Nicholas is written by Clement Clark Moore under a pen name. You're going to recognize it as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and All Through the House. Moore doesn't think it's going to do really well. He writes under a pen name. It takes off like wildfire, and we start to have an imagination of who this fat, jolly elf is coming into the house to bring presents for the children and taking care of things that way. We have a story of him. It takes off. Moore puts his name on it. The fellas at Wyatt Enterprise actually reproduced a Civil War era version of the poem. I've got that buried somewhere. You'll see an image here, and it's really fun to see that. But Santa doesn't have a face yet. Different people take stabs at it, and Santa's no new thing. This is not American. The Dutch Sinterklaas or St. Nicholas, Victorian Britons take Father Christmas, who was a drunk reveler, and they sort of clean him up to play the role. Pierre Noël comes from France, and I always butcher the Italian. Bobo Natale is a character much along these veins out of Italy. So different traditions have the same story arc or the same character beats in them, and they're telling them. He comes here. Clement Clark Moore writes the poem. We have an imagination, but it's just our imagination, and each of us have our own imagination. Well, different people draw. We see a drawing of Santa as an elf in the 1850s. I saw one somewhere where he was riding a hot air balloon. I hope I have an image to share of that. Then enter Thomas Nast, one of the famous artists of the era. I see a nod over there, Jack. You recognize that name from great Civil War drawings and woodcuts in Harper's. He moves to America as a kid from Landau in Bavaria, not yet Germany, but from those German traditions, comes with his mother and his sister. He starts as an artist in newspapers and gets headhunted out and actually gets contracted out. He finally starts at Harper's, and in January of 1863, the cover of Harper's Weekly has Santa Claus in camp, and you see Santa Claus in a red, white, and blue Santa Claus suit giving presents to the Union soldiers. Then you see that year, you see the famous woodcut at the center that shows the separation of a husband and a wife. It's the full centerfold of Harper's, and very iconic to the Civil War. He's sitting, writing a letter or looking at her picture by the fire while a friend is on picket in the back. She is knelt by the children's bed praying as the children sleep, or she's knelt by the window next to the children's bed. Nast is so rich in his drawings. Take a look in there. Behind the children, the stockings are hung by the chimney. When you look at it, Santa on his sleigh is going up out of the house off the chimney. Santa is also on the sleigh, on the ground, running past a Union camp, chucking presents out. So you get to see Santa there. And I bring Nast up because Nast draws Santa here. He draws it a couple of years later. And finally, in the 1880s, Thomas Nast draws the Santa that we recognize as the Coca-Cola Santa. So it's starting. Santa's taking shape here during the Civil War, and he'll fill up a little bit later. Music, a lot of stuff that we know is going to be very popular. I mentioned we're actually recording on December 17th for a Christmas release because I've got a bunch of editing to do here. We are 2 days shy of the anniversary of Silent Night being written in Germany. It'll come into America in 1857 in English. Many songs that we know, whether they are religious songs or whether they are secular songs of good tiding and cheer, whether it's We Wish You a Merry Christmas from the 1500s, O Come All Ye Faithful from the 1740s, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen from 1833. There's an awful lot of stuff here. Of course, we know that I heard the bells on Christmas morn is Longfellow's poem from the Civil War. That'll start here and go forward. Pausing for Jeptha Creed.
Yeah.
Understood.
Take a sip. Take a sip, everybody.
Absolutely. Here we come a-wassailing. There are so many of the songs that we know, including Up on the Housetop. Reindeer's Paws, Out Jumps Good Old Santa Claus, 1864.
Wow.
Well, Clement Clark Moore has written the story. Nast has taken his first stab. Here's the song. This is all coming together. Christmas cards and Christmas greetings are common. Mostly, I think you're going to see handwritten cards. You can buy cards in the stores in the larger cities. Again, this is an outlay of money, and with money being not quite what it is today, things being thinner, you're going to work much smaller than you would today, just because of where we are socioeconomically. Food is a celebration. Turkey, ham, you see it. And I'm just going to bounce around here because I have to dig through notes, and I apologize for that. But there's one Christmas here that I want to really call attention to because it talks about food, and that is a Christmas from 1864. This is new to my discussion of Christmas and was shared with me by my friend Johnny Lloyd. This was a Christmas dinner 1864. This is a Southern account, and that was Christmas dinner 1864. Will you allow me to give you the menu of our dinner on Christmas Day 1864? We had black-eyed peas and some fried strip bacon, cornbread and milk, and for a dessert, my wife had gotten hold of some dried apples with which she made some pies. And do you know, we enjoyed that dinner about as much as any dinner we had had before or since then. I well remember this dinner as there were times as the times were getting very tight, provisions becoming very scarce, and as we sat down and gave thanks for what we had, I called over the bill of fare and said, I wonder what it'll be next Christmas. Remember, this is Christmas 1864. The Confederacy is about to capitulate. Thank God before the next Christmas, the clouds of war had rolled by, and we had turkey with cranberry sauce, etc. But it was no more heartily enjoyed than was that plain fare of the Christmas before. It's who you're with. Christmas definitely, it's one thing we can certainly, in interpretation, in the celebration of our Christmas, be too even-handed with what Christmas is. And I'm reminded of this because when I was in church this Sunday, our pastor mentioned back home there'll be a Blue Christmas service this Thursday, which is where our church goes ahead and has a time for people who aren't having a good time at Christmas, from loss, from heartache, to be able to express that. And that gave me pause on Sunday morning as I thought about getting ready for this, because we love to look at these Christmas things. We'd love to hear in 1861 from Josiah Favel, who says, on Christmas Day, the camp was en fete, which means dressed for a festivity. In the morning, we had full dress review and were dismissed for the day, only the guard being on duty. We'd love to hear from Fred Floyd from the 40th New York, who will go on and say, on the day preceding Christmas, Colonel Riley suggested we decorate the camp during the day, and we obtained hundreds of cedar and fir trees that grew near and abundant. Each street was adorned by them. The flagpole was decorated with them. But then we probably should keep in mind time and place. If we're talking about the Army of the Potomac in December 1862, we hear from the 1st Minnesota, from James Wright. Remember, this is 2 weeks after the Battle of Fredericksburg. The Union Army is thrown back. Many men are sitting next to empty seats around their campfires or in their little wood huts as they have built winter quarters. James Wright from the 1st Minnesota writes, December 25th, 1862 was not a Merry Christmas to the boys in blue on the banks of the Rappahannock, but recently returned from their ill-starred expedition across the river. It was our second Christmas away from home and the gloomiest of them all, for we had not yet recovered from the depression of the late battles. Let's flip the coin. What's good for the goose isn't always good for the gander. Kevin, the CEO of the SVBF of Shenandoah Valley Battlefields, was helping me get ready. I was hoping to do a big digest episode about Confederate Christmas or Christmas in the Confederacy, because we're overdue for it. Kevin sent me an account from the Richmond Times-Dispatch from December 24th. So remember, while Wright is sitting disconsolate with the 1st Minnesota, this story is sent to the newspaper, and this comes from the Confederate Cavalry of the Army of Northern Virginia. On Friday last, General Hampton, this would be Wade Hampton from South Carolina, took a detachment of 500 from his brigade and proceeded to Pekin in Prince William County, Virginia, and succeeded in capturing a picket of 46 men commanded by a federal lieutenant, and in the same neighborhood took enough more stray Yankees to make the number of prisoners 172. Great. Military stuff, fine. Christmas time. The best part of it, however, was the capture of a number of sutlers' wagons on their way to the Federal Army with the most valuable stores for the Christmas holidays. It was an easy task for our boys to take possession of these, considering it their right under the circumstances to enjoy the frolic intended for the Yankees. They found almost every conceivable luxury, such as the best liquor and cigars, preserved fruits and oranges and lemons, cakes, sugars, and coffee, and it's hardly necessary to say that they supplied themselves liberally. This would be fun to make into a movie. Confederate cavalry on patrol captures Federals and then captures a sutler's tent, and it becomes a Christmas celebration.
Yeah.
That's got all the makings of it.
It does, but it's fun, but it takes perspective to remember. Remember, during that very somber Christmas on the Confederate side in 1864, where a family is scarce and doesn't have much, but remembers good. Remember probably the best Christmas card the United States as the Federal Union has ever received, and I think my friends down south, probably some of them will have objection to this, but remember that one man wrote to the president, "I beg to present you as a Christmas gift the city of Savannah with 150 heavy guns and plenty of ammunition and also 25,000 bales of cotton. William Tecumseh Sherman."
Yeah.
So
That's going above and beyond for your Christmas gift.
Yeah.
I would think so. I think that's trying to get the next job up. I would think that's looking to get hired there. So, but just after Sherman goes ahead and captures Savannah, something pretty cool happens, and this story isn't often told, and it's a Michigan story. It's recorded by Charles Belknap, who's then a captain at Chickamauga. He's a lieutenant on the skirmish line. He's active in Veterans Association stuff after the war. He actually, when Michigan dedicates its monuments at Chickamauga and Chattanooga, he writes the book that goes with that dedication.
Wow.
Yep. Belknap gets assigned for Christmas. On Christmas Eve, 18-year-old Belknap from Grand Rapids, Michigan, leading Company H of the 21st Michigan, receives orders to muster 90 men and 100 mules and all the food they could carry. I wish I had the name of the town. They're sent to a small town outside of Savannah that has been ravaged by war. The Federal bummers going with Sherman came through it. The Confederate Home Guard came through it looking for food. This town is starving and is disconsolate, and Belknap is sent out there with essentially a relief column to go help this town with food. And it's, the story here says that as the soldiers go down a palmetto-lined road with rice marshes, many of the Michigan men see alligators for their first time. But one of the fellas, jovial soldier, begins to sing Christmas carols to drive away the homesickness because this is his third Christmas away from his family. It said he was looking to sing Christmas carols to drive away the homesickness that was eating his heart out. Captain Belknap, as the commander, approved and ordered the man to fall out by the roadside and encouraged the other men to sing along. Soon the entire column is singing familiar carols. And it says, to the accompaniment of the clank of the bell of the lead animal and the shouts of the drivers, which I can imagine what the teamster sounded like trying to keep those mules moving. The soldiers approach the village, and the residents, remember, they've been hit by Sherman's bummers. They've hit by Home Guard. Here comes another body of troops. They're having nothing doing. They stay locked up and hidden inside. Belknap has his men unpack the wagons and the pack mules and start fires and start cooking. Slowly, the citizens come out, and I can just imagine this is another story I would love to see made into a film. Many with small children, they feed the town, and it says that the soldiers. It says there was such a touch of home about it all. The women and children around the campfires, the Christmas spirit, that those bummer boys fairly bubbled over with happiness. Men slept with songs men joined in songs who had never tried a note before in their lives. That night, those soldiers slept on the village green, wrapped up, and marched back to Savannah the next day.
What an incredible story.
I know, and it's a story of charity. It's a story of the beginning of reconciliation, of something that we're still having conversations about today. Sherman takes Savannah, and here's the next step before he even heads to the Carolinas, at least for a few men and for one town.
And probably one of your earliest examples of military Christmas carolers, right?
It might be, absolutely. And remember, Christmas is different in different places. I don't have the documentation in front of me, but there is a lady who is in Michigan's, and sorry to have all the Michigan examples. The text has just been here for the years. She's in Michigan Women's Hall of Fame. Her name is Julia Wheelock. She wrote a book after the war called The Boys in White. Her brother was mortally wounded with the 8th Michigan at Second Bull Run. She and her sister-in-law, the Orville's wife, get to D.C. a day too late. He's already been buried. Her sister will go back a newly minted widow. Julia stays with the Michigan Soldiers' Aid Society, which is one of the Sanitary Commission branches from state-specific, and she spends the rest of the war working with them. In the 1870s, she writes The Boys in White, because then, as the Veteran Association, they're remembering the boys in blue, they're remembering the boys in gray. Her boys in white were the boys in their burial shrouds who didn't get to come home. Her book is fascinating. One of the stories she tells, which would have been Christmas probably of 1863, the Veteran Reserve Corps is standing up and getting on its feet, but it's not from any particular state or any particular regiment. It's men who have been wounded or sick in the Army and can't march in the active duty anymore, but they won't go home. They won't take their discharge. They still have a way to serve the United States government, so they continue to do that. Julia writes about most people ignoring them, and she takes meals to those guys in their barracks.
Oh.
And then, of course, remember the boys who are at Elmira, who are at Andersonville, who are at Libby, who are not only away from their family, but in capture as well. So there's a lot of, as we talk about Christmas, there's a lot of really great celebration. There's a lot of things that we see in today that really coalesces, comes together. I mean, there's one more great story that I'm surprised I'm not going this far without saying. The Christmas Carol in the 1840s, Charles Dickens brings it up. By the time of the Civil War, the book is famous. It's a 5-stave long Palmer novella. We actually had worked with Civil War, one of our patrons, one of our coffee grinders, John Connors, who read the entire Christmas Carol. We did a very slight abridgment. We're working after we did that abridgment and I made the choices. I found out that Dickens used to read the Christmas Carol as a fundraiser for orphanages, and he actually left his abridgment behind. We're working on re-editing that for History Fix, and that will be Dickens's abridgment. But you can see that. Matter of fact, the opening for the Christmas Carol on Civil War Digital Digest has another of those lit Christmas trees. You've probably already seen the image here. So,
yeah, that's my favorite Christmas movie adaptation.
Okay, which one?
The Disney one.
Okay, I'm Muppets.
With Jim Carrey, the animated one. But I was a kid when that one came out, and I just couldn't stop watching it. I can't. It's an amazing story. And I'm a little biased, too. I think I played Bob Cratchit in the church play of it. So,
and, you know, the stories are timeless. It comes out. It's a story that comes out of the 1840s. We love to envision the Victoria. Me as a history buff, I love to envision the Victorian era. But let's face it, we can go ahead and use they've done it as a modern version. The story types, the tropes, they're all still there, and they're all still relevant today, which is what makes it a great story.
Yeah. And Will, I'll pick your brain for a second about, from a film perspective, what are the benefits, the pros and the cons you see, or just kind of your opinion on films and shows today using Christmas in telling the war story from a historical perspective, whether it be World War I or World War II or the Civil War, and this kind of reconciliation in the moment of war, this pause, this break in the moment of, extreme chaos and bloodshed, to use Christmas as an example of, the guns fall silent. You see it in Gods and Generals and other movies, the crossing of the Rappahannock. In those moments like that, create this idea of, oh, we're able to get along. We're no longer enemies for this one moment. And Christmas is that kind of that key to that lock. So I wasn't sure what your thoughts are in the film world with the use of it.
For me, the use of it is a way to take people back. I think we don't get in the Civil War world, we don't get the ultimate story. The ultimate story is 1914 in the trenches, the soccer game between the lines. I mean, World War I wins here with the best example. We just have to say that. Patton's comments after to the Third Army in Bastogne, as we're thinking about the 80th anniversary of the Bulge here, the same exact. There's some strong stuff there. It's humanity. People are trying to kill each other, and people are stopped to remember that this is not an other. This is not a German, a Confederate, a Yankee. This is another human. This is another man. This is another woman. Belknap, they've just been with Sherman with the 21st marching through Georgia. Their job has been to make it so Georgia does not have a military capability to continue to feed the Confederacy. That involves destruction, burning, taking. Now he and his fellows are told, turn around and go give.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it is. I think it's in our shared humanity, in our shared connection, which is the watchword of the digest, in our shared ability to find the good in others or to find acceptance with others.
I think Christmas, too, I think the Christmas spirit is amplified in times of war, whether it be the Civil War, World War I, because people are always looking for that glimmer of hope or that something to be thankful for, to celebrate, when all every day from, dawn to dusk is just death and destruction, and you're just looking for something to be, happy about.
And let's face it, we always say that in the Army that it's it's days of boredom surrounding moments of sheer terror. Even if it's not the sheer terror, marching, camping in the mud compared to living. I've been in recreated Civil War camps. We're looking at the digest in the next year. I hope we actually build for you guys, I hope we actually build a winter quarter based on an original one. And okay, guys, out of the valley, we're talking out of the 18th Connecticut. So we're talking the boys who were captured at 2nd Winchester. This is documentation from 1964. I'm hoping we get to build this and show show best we can recreate how it happened. But these are guys who are away. This is, you may live in a mud camp. That's not as good as your home, whether you're on a small farm, whether you're in a small town, whether you're in a big city. Just the separation. The blunt fact of the matter is people didn't travel as far as often. So oftentimes, whether particularly Yankees, but even Confederates, most of these gentlemen, most of these boys are as far from home as they've ever been. And now they're gone for multiple years and they're away. There's hope. There's joy. There's community. There's a chance to relax for just a minute.
Yeah. It's powerful. And I think it's a reason that's why it's used a lot, is because, the historian, the super into it historian, or just the person that happens to, catch a film or read an interpretive sign or even look at a painting. Everyone's got that connection of whether you celebrate Christmas or not. This time of year is special for almost everybody. So everybody can kind of make that connection with the past through this season.
Absolutely, and we have folks in a more limited number who would have celebrated Hanukkah in the camps. Judah Benjamin, Confederate, was the Secretary of War. We have at least one cabinet officer who is of the Jewish faith. So we have other but these all come at the same time, and there's no coincidence to that with where our shared humanity is. But it allows us to take a look and get away. And for me, I'm not the classically trained historian. My degree is in political theory, so my degree is in applied history. My passion isn't in moving chess pieces around the battlefield, the chessboard of the battlefield. I don't move pieces terribly well. Like, Jack, where did this guy go? Where's this regiment, Jack? I have to lean into you. I have to lean into Andy. But when we start talking about writing home from a winter quarters on the Rappahannock in 1862, these are conversations where my interest in storytelling and where my passion for humanity really connects well with history.
For sure. Well, I think that's a good way to kind of sum it up for everybody listening. This is a time of year to remember, reflect, be grateful, give thanks. And, from us at the Battlefields and Bourbon podcast, and I'm sure from you all at Civil War Digital Digest, we're just extremely grateful for everyone that's able to spend their time listening, liking. This helps keep history alive and preserve it for future generations, whether it's digitally or physically. So
if you can't get down to the battlefields, we're happy to do what we can. You guys with Battlefields and Bourbon, of course, the Digest works with Shenandoah Valley Battlefields for Fridays at the front, and we've done stuff with the Iron Brigade at Gettysburg, the Guard. We're trying to find ways that if you can't get there, we can help bring it in a small way to you, but there is just nothing like standing there. And a lot of these places, you go to a 3rd Winchester battlefield, then go into Winchester. There's some wonderful stuff. There's a lot of great community that has grown up as people have their life on the edges of what is battlefields that we're working to preserve, and both are a lot of fun to get to go see.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Elijah, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just once again, big shout out to Jeptha Creed Distillery for their Christmas gift to us of their red, white, and blue bourbon batch number 3. I know we certainly appreciate that, and it's just another opportunity for us to, bring awareness to a product and also another great historic topic to pair with it, especially this time of year.
Yeah. Well, Will, thank you so much for coming on, and everyone listening, we hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and some happy holidays, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Merry Christmas, everybody.